I hope you enjoyed this interview with Tegan and Sara. They're performers, twins from Canada. In our discussion, they talk about the fact that they see themselves not just as artists, but also as entrepreneurs. We are so delighted to have you here. This is such a treat. What an incredible space, what an incredible city. I feel like we're immersed in this world of music and entertainment. So thank you so much for joining us.
It's our pleasure. It is a beautiful building, and this room is one of my favorites in the building. So I like to be in it.
Well, as you know, this is part of a class on creativity and innovation and entrepreneurship, and I'm going to be talking to you about how these things are part of your creative process. So you guys have been working together. Obviously, you're twins. My sister and brother are actually twins, so I grew up with twins in my family.
You understand the magic.
I do, right? So you've been doing this since you were 15. How early did you figure out that this is something that was really your passion?
I mean, I don't know that we would have necessarily described it that way for a number of years, but looking back on it, like the original, whatever that magical reason, that intuition that we had to pick up a guitar and start writing original music instead of, say, for example, like learning other people's songs. I mean, we really specifically picked up a guitar and immediately went into writing our own music at 15. And I think that looking back on it now, it was clear that we were immediately fixated. We would rush home from school. We would constantly write songs, sometimes apart, sometimes together. But it was a compulsion and sort of something that we were obsessed with almost immediately.
I'm sure that there's some magic, obviously being twins, about the collaboration. What can we learn about the creative collaboration when you have two people who have grown up together, who know each other so well?
Oh, I think that Sarah and I took classical piano for like 7 or 8 years before we ever picked up a guitar, but it was such an independent, I mean, the piano, just is such an independent thing, so.
We weren't doing a lot of chopsticks.
There was not a lot of collaboration on the piano, but I think once we had a couple guitars in the house and we were writing songs, it was obvious that like we had a natural, like, my instinct wasn't to write with Sara, but my instinct was to have her run the tape recorder to record my songs. And then by, virtue of her being there, it was like, well, maybe you have harmony ideas or, like.
We wouldn't have even known, though.
Okay, we wouldn't have said harmony, but it was like, oh, well, Sarah will sing along with me, or she'll come up with other parts. Like, it just sort of really happened naturally. And I think that, you hear about all these really famous families with lots of singers in them, the McGarrigles are the first that come to mind. And but they grew up singing together, and they grew up in a house that was musical, and we didn't grow up that way. So it was kind of like this very weird, stunted kind of trial and error thing where I would be like, oh, I have this new song. And so Sara would set up the tape recorder and get ready to record me. And she oftentimes would count in or talk about the song before I would play it. And we just naturally started to collaborate with one another. But that could go wrong really easily, too. We were 15 years old, and we were teenagers and sharing this one tape recorder and this one guitar. And so that could also just end in, like, a solo song because we would start fighting with each other. And then, Sara would leave the room or she wouldn't like the song. Or I don't know. I mean, like, I listened to the recordings recently, and we do seem like we're having fun. But I think we would argue about how to collaborate. So it took us a long time to create a way that felt maybe even.
One of the things that we spent a lot of time in a class on creativity is thinking about inspiration. Where does the original spark for an idea come from? And can you share that? Obviously, your music spans so many different styles and obviously a lot of time. Do you? Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about that spark of inspiration at the beginning of each song?
I wish that something had changed between now and when we were 15, but I think the spark for me is the same. I mean, I think I was always just really inspired to talk about my experiences, and I think when I figured out that I could somehow tell a story and interest somebody by telling them about an experience, especially like specifically an emotional experience I'd had, specifically a breakup generally, or sadness, or some sort of self-deprecating theme. I just really love that, and I feel like that's the place I go back to. That's my well of inspiration always, is just to try to find a universal like emotion or experience that everyone will relate to. It's really narcissism. I mean, at this point, if someone said to me, you can still be a musician, you will still be very successful, but you cannot sing any of your old songs or write songs about love, I would quit. I don't, and it's not because I don't find that other kinds of music interesting. I just feel like that's what I like to do. Like, that's what I find inspiring, is to talk about love. And
do you know, it's interesting because I've wondered over the years, Tegan and I are fairly well-rounded. We're not like only dating and breaking up, which is essentially what the body of work that we've produced over the years. It's basically just
for yourself.
One relationship and breakup after the other. And I've asked myself, like, what does inspire someone to become a political band, or why are some bands much more poetic or abstract? Like, why is it that we've communicated so specifically about love? And obviously being in my 30s now, I've had a long time to sort of like consider this and like, why is it still interesting? Or like Tegan said, why is it one of the only things that we really still go back to for inspiration? And I've wondered if it's partly being gay and growing up in the 90s, and we didn't see a lot of examples of love and relationships that mirrored probably what we were thinking about or becoming interested or just naturally falling into. And I think in a way, music was the first example for me of a way that I could communicate to people without it having to be like sitting down and talking about, oh, I have a crush on so-and-so. It was a way that I could put all of that energy and all of that language and all of that emotion that I couldn't share and that I wasn't seeing everywhere else. And I could sort of do it in a little bit more of an abstract way, or a little bit more vague way. Like, I listen to my early songs and I don't know what I'm singing about, except that I know I was singing about the girls I had crushes on, and
in a very confusing way.
But that was how I learned to express what was totally. It wasn't even an option. I couldn't talk about it with my friends. I couldn't talk about it with my parents. There was no real way to tap in or connect with what I was feeling as a teenager. And music was the way that I knew how to do it. And so it's a weird hiccup for us. I think we still go back to it as a way to really communicate our insecurities or our regrets, or.
But this is wonderful. I was listening to your music a lot over the last few days in preparation, and I thought, wow, all this music is about relationships.
Yeah.
And no, it was really fascinating. I thought, do you actually need to have the emotion in order to write the song? Can you rely upon the past emotion in order to conjure up the ideas? Or do you have to be going through it right now to have the energy come through the lyrics and the music?
I used to say sometimes that I felt like in the midst of a really sad or awful time that I'm the least motivated and the least productive. So I actually think for me, the further I get away from an experience, the more insight I have. But certainly our fans have accused us of writing better music when we've appeared to be depressed or sad. So I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I feel like one of our least emotional records for me was our last record, Sainthood, and I was really happy. So maybe I wasn't tapping into that raw, organic emotion that I'd felt on past, records. But I don't think you have to be a depressed person to write sad music. I don't think that you have to be a really happy person to write happy music either. I think ultimately, as an artist, I think my job is to, write music that people relate to. And when I say my job, it's my responsibility at this point. That's the exchange of energy I feel like is happening. I write something that feels really real and raw, and it's universal, and you enjoy it. That's our exchange. And so for me, even though I'm not really sad or depressed anymore, I can look around and see a lot of really sad people struggling with a lot of really intense things. And that, as soon as I feel that compassion or emotion about that, it reminds me of times I've felt that way. And so it's a sort of, circular experience where sometimes all I have to do is just open my eyes and I'm like, oh, I'm sad for them.
So the empathy comes through.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yep.
So in this day and age, when people listen to music, there are videos associated with them. So it's not just writing music and singing it, there's also the whole visual media that goes along with it. Do you think that enhances the experience for you and for the listeners to have these visual elements, or do you think in any way it detracts from the experience?
That's complicated. It just is the way it is. I mean, I grew up we were huge music lovers, and everything mattered to me. The press photos, the videos, the live experience, the liner notes in an album. I mean, I think that, image is everything. And, when I've gotten into complicated conversations with people about not describing our band as a brand, for example, this makes a lot of artists really uncomfortable. But I don't know how to delineate between the songs, like what we do there, and then everything else, which the everything else nowadays is video. It's your face, it's photos, it's marketing, however you want to describe it. So
And there's a danger in creating too strong of a narrative in a video or too strong of an image, because it does streamline the music into that. So it's always a delicate. I think making videos has probably been the thing that we have.
I hate
we hate
videos.
it because it's so hard to sum up a song, and there's just this natural instinct with video directors. They write you a narrative, but a lot of times the narratives in music videos are either really weird and kind of awesome, like Radiohead, or they're straight. Man, woman, boy, girl, whatever they meet, they run around, it's sadness, and then we sum up their story by the end of the video. So we've had a hard time with that because we didn't want to streamline our music into that narrative, but we also didn't want to streamline it into a gay narrative either. So we've had to create these really like visually stimulating videos and try to capture the essence of our band in a different way.
But it's important, and I don't think you can turn away from it. You just have to find a balance. You are essentially making a commercial about your song, but ultimately about you. And we've not necessarily hit it out of the park every single time, but I think there are a few videos where we were able to sort of like do both, like honor the song, but also honor the brand.
So there are a lot of other things going on besides videos and YouTube, and there's lots of other technology that's affecting the way that we listen to music, share music, the way music is created. How has that changed over the course of your career?
I mean, it really ages us, but when we started out, I mean, people really did still buy CDs. I mean, we were almost in the height of
Not just CDs, we used to buy cassette tapes because we would make mixtapes still. I mean, this was like...
Well, absolutely in our childhood, of course, but I mean, just starting from the beginning of our career, CDs were still absolutely, that was the medium. No one was listening to vinyl, and digital still seemed pretty far off. So we've definitely seen things really change. And, there's, of course, we could sit here and talk about all the bad things that have happened to music because of this movement and all of these new ways to listen to music. But ultimately, people are listening to music. So that's still the positive. The overwhelming positive is that, are they listening to them on that massive set of stereo speakers? No. Are they listening to it compressed, and does it sound as good as in the studio? No. Do they care? No. So how much time and energy are you going to put into thinking about that? And I think that helped us. That freed us up in terms of being creative in the studio. I think it's actually made us be maybe a little more flexible than some artists. Is that, yes, I would prefer everyone buy my record and play it on a stereo system that sounds as good as the stereo system that I listened to the record on. But ultimately, I know most people are probably listening to it on their iPhone, and that's upsetting. But that's also how they enjoy music. And now they're able to bring music with them everywhere. They can go for a walk, they can go for a run, they can take me on vacation. We get letters, like unbelievable amounts of letters from people like who are serving in Afghanistan and Iraq, like these young women and men who have, uploaded all of these records to their iPod. And I'm glad we can go with them there. I'm glad they don't have a giant suitcase of records like when we used to tour. We would be like, bringing these big books of CDs. Like, I'm glad that people don't have to do that. But I know it sounds like crap. And that's too bad, too.
Also, too, there's obviously the financial side of things has really changed. People talk about it a lot. We joke around that we never sold any records. So when record sales declined, we were not carrying because we hadn't really sold any. I mean, it was like hand-to-hand combat. We were at shows saying, thank you very much for Tegan and Sara, and we're going to now sell CDs. And if people bought them, they bought them. But that was almost all we could really count on in the beginning. So as the statistics started to look more and more dire, we just started to
embrace it.
Well, we also focused. It was like we didn't even care. We just sort of focused. Okay, where are we making money? Selling T-shirts. You can't make digital T-shirts. We just were like, well, we'll sell more T-shirts and we'll do more shows. And that's honestly, our business model.
Embrace the ways people are listening to music. Embrace streaming. The honest to God truth is, like, even when people come up and they're like, oh, I downloaded your record for free. I'm not upset about that. They bought a record and they're meeting me, which most of the time means they're at a show. So they're giving back in some way. So I like all the changes. It's been kind of fun. We've really enjoyed it. But we're not curmudgeons about it either, at least not in front of the cameras. Behind the scenes, we complain. Sarah tried to get us off social media. My managers are smiling about this, but Sarah tried to get us off social media 4 years ago. Literally was like,
it was longer than 4 years ago. It was before the con came out.
Oh, it was before the con. Okay. Yeah. Sarah was basically like, we should just not have Facebook or any of these things. We should get rid of all of our social media and just have our website, one place. And we were like, you're out of your mind. But and ultimately we have learned to just embrace it.
This is like getting.
Sarah's on Instagram now, making little
I've embraced it, but I still think that the world would be better without the internet.
Right.
I really do.
Right.
Why is that?
I hate the internet. I think it's wrong.
She's on it a lot, though. For somebody who hates it, she's on it a lot.
This is the thing. I think there are wonderful things. I think that it's an important tool for news and for spreading information and education, and I love the idea that you don't have to.
How could qualify that then?
In
with
my
all
heart,
these great things.
In my heart, I love the idea that you don't have to have a certain amount of money to know who we are. I love the idea that you can hear our music without ever having to have purchased it. I love that you don't have to buy a magazine in a major city. You could live in a tiny little town somewhere, and you can go on the internet and find us. I love that part of the internet.
On dial-up.
On dial-up, yeah. But I'm afraid of social media and the impact that it's going to have on us as a culture.
Yeah,
for
what
sure.
are you afraid of?
I think that a lot of the things that I don't like about the internet are things that we had before the internet. Obviously there's a lot about cyberbullying. I mean, we were bullied as kids, in a couple of different grades, and that happened without the internet. I think bullying happens, but I think the internet has made it easier, and it sort of has intensified it. It's hard to bully someone to their face. I remember the kids that were mean to us, and they weren't.
Who was mean to you?
They weren't serial killers. Come on, they weren't serial killers, but they were mean to us, and that's hard. It's hard to be mean to somebody face to face.
Are they mean to you now?
Well, people are so mean on the internet. I mean, the things that people
we're pretty lucky
say
though.
are unbelievable.
We have we have friends that have fans that are actually more vicious. We know bands who people are more vicious somehow.
But imagine the scale. Imagine the scale. What's
agreed.
vicious? Things that you can't believe that a human being can say to another human being, or just mean stuff. You know what I mean? It's what does it matter?
Well, you know what it does is, you're right. It is tough to look at someone and say, I don't like you, or I think you're stupid, or your mom's a whatever. But it's a lot easier to do that on Twitter because you can be anonymous. So I agree, it's definitely intensified the bullying, and it has made it anonymous. Our mother's a teacher, and she's a social worker who works in a school, and she constantly is working with the teachers and the students to help them understand that whether they're being bullied at school or not, when they go home and they put on their Facebook page or their Twitter account and they're being bullied by kids at school, that they have to be held accountable for that. And I think as a society, we're not being held accountable. On my way here, I was talking about a video I just saw of a huge, massive pop star who was being booed at the airport by paparazzi. Just that in itself, I think culturally is just really sad. We have this 24-hour news stream that has to constantly be updated, and so we're following around our famous people, and we're bullying them and being mean, and then we're putting up online, and I'm ingesting it, I'm participating, I'm giving the clicks because I'm like, no, why did they do that? And I'm mad, but my click doesn't show my madness, it shows my support because I'm clicking on it. So I think we've witnessed as a band that people can be pretty mean and vicious. We've been lucky that people haven't been that terrible, especially considering that we're gay and we're alternative and we're so mouthy and we're very outspoken about what we believe in. But it's tough. It's made the world really different. And in terms of music, it has made people maybe a little less accountable with what they say about you.
No, it's interesting to hear everything you talk about because you sound very entrepreneurial. Mm-hmm. This class is being offered from Stanford, but from the Entrepreneurship Center in the School of Engineering. Mm-hmm. And we are sitting in a world where most of the time people are talking about entrepreneurship in high-tech firms. Mm-hmm. But do you see yourself and identify yourselves as entrepreneurs? And do you look at yourselves as building essentially your own venture?
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's absolutely how we would describe ourselves. And it's interesting because when we were 17 and deciding whether we were going to go to college, or do this. I remember my mom saying to me, well, what do you want to do? If you were going to go to school, could you do music? And I was always like, that doesn't feel right. And I couldn't put my finger on why it didn't feel right. Mm-hmm. And I think now, 14 years later, I realize that I love music, but I love business. And I think if I could go back in a time machine, and I really, didn't necessarily want to do music, I would have done business. I love it. I love having. I love the problem-solving element. I love that our business changes all the time. I love making money. I do. I really love having a problem. I love the mathematics of it. I love working with people. I love leading people.
You love working for yourself, not having to.
I love that element of it. I think that what keeps us doing this, because I will always be a creative person, and I will always probably make music. But if I couldn't make money doing it in my own band, I think now I realize that I could probably be satisfied and sustain some kind of career in business, whatever it was. I always like to think that if we maybe accidentally ended up in music. I don't know. I wonder if we would have come together and sold something different just as successfully if we had,
Well, we've always held on to
maybe we would have opened our own dojo. We were into karate when
That's
we were
right,
little.
we were into that.
Yeah, maybe we would be successful karate teachers. I don't know.
Probably not.
That sounds like a nightmare, but
we did right from the beginning say we thought music was just a vehicle for us to whatever it is we were going to end up doing. And I think that, ultimately we just love creating. And I think running a business is a truly satisfying thing, especially when it's your own business, because you're getting to contribute something really great into the world, but also you're helping a lot of people. We have an amazing, group of people who work with us, who help us do what we do every day and who help us make music. And it's wonderful to know all of those people are working with us and a part of our business with us.
One of the things that we teach in our classes, entrepreneurship, innovation, creativity, is to try lots of things and keep what works. And one of the biggest problems people have is a fear of failure, fear of even trying because they're so afraid that what will happen if it doesn't work out as expected. Can you talk a little bit about your process of trial and error? Clearly, it's something you have embraced in some way to be able to have so much success.
It's nice to fail every once in a while. It's good to have things not work out. It makes you appreciate the things that do work out, but mostly it's just, I think what we've learned is that when we've set out with a bigger goal than, like, when we've said, okay, we want to sell this much, and we didn't get close to that, we still probably sold more than if we had been realistic and said, oh, well, we'll probably only sell this, because we aimed higher, we were more ambitious. And I think that, creatively, it's about just finishing things. For me, it's like, it's really easy to get 3/4 of the way through and just quit. And even when I know something isn't great, I still finish it because I feel like it's better later on, not in the moment, but maybe like a year later when I go back and listen to some of the stuff that I finished. It's not good, but I'm just glad I saw it through. And I think that for our business, every time we sort of fail, it's great. We learn from the experience. We're not egotistical. We're really good at breaking things down, seeing why something worked and what it didn't. I'm sure it drives a lot of the people we work with crazy, but we do after a tour. I'll go through and say, I don't like this. This didn't work. This feels too much. This was too many days. This is too many days off. We're losing money here. This person isn't busy enough. Let's try to maximize their role. Because I want to be successful. Ultimately, I want to be a very successful collaboration and artist and businesswoman. I want to succeed, and to succeed I have to understand why we failed in certain ways.
I love reading, biographies, and the most interesting people are the people who have had tremendous success, but they've also had terrible, terrible failures, whether it's in their marriages or in their family life or in their career. There's something absolutely fascinating about knowing that no one is just successful. There's just no one out there who is just successful. Those people are safe and boring. It's really the mistakes that we talk about.
It's risk.
Sitting around, a dinner party, I never tell the stories of all the things that have gone right. I always tell the stories of when things went wrong. It's funny. It's good to learn from your mistakes.
Well, this has been so enlightening and so inspiring, and I want to thank you so much for your time and your authenticity.
Thank you.
Thanks.